Let's go.
Excellent. Welcome everybody to Find Your Moonshot. We are joined by Naveen Jain today and Helen Volrath, and we are going to go ahead and get started with this webinar. I am stopping my share so that it can just be the two of you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. So today's webinar is a little bit different than the ones we've done previously in the past, given that there's only 2 days left in this year, and everyone is hyper focused on, reflecting on 2022 and setting themselves up for 2023. But today we kind of wanted to just say pause, and before we make those New Year's resolutions, before we think about changing our careers, before we jump into new projects, really asking ourselves, do we have the mindset to create these moonshots? Are we limiting ourselves? Are we following our purpose? Is the purpose we have in mind really our purpose, or is it someone that we think we are? What could we actually achieve if we weren't worried about what might stop us? So who better to walk us through that than Naveen Jain, the Moon Man himself. I've known Naveen for about 6 years now, and I'll say when I first met him, I was someone who made decisions definitely out of place of fear, and I had very high expectations for myself, but very low confidence or belief in myself that I could achieve anything new in areas that I had never been in before. So when I joined Viome, I had every reason under the sun to be intimidated by the company. I didn't have a science background. I didn't have a medical background. And really health and wellness was just something I was pursuing on the side because of my own health issues. So over time, I learned that it was actually an advantage to be to not have those backgrounds. I came from a place that I think is very similar to many of our customers who are in pain, who are hurting, who have a health issue, and it can be very scary at times. So they're just looking for answers. So that became my purpose at Viome, was to say, this is something the world needs to know about, but it's very complicated. It's revolutionary even in the industry itself. How do I take these complex things that I'm learning, and how do I break them down in a way that people can understand in a way that they could apply to their own life? So it suddenly everything around at Viome that I thought was not really my area became relevant to my purpose, and I had to understand, I had to learn more, I had to challenge things because it would help me tell that story in a way that people can understand. So I guess my first question, Naveen, for you would be, why is being a non-expert actually helpful and not a disadvantage?
Well, once you become expert at anything, you become an incrementalist. That means you can be 10% better than someone else. But if you really want to disrupt an industry, being an expert limits you to what is known, what is the foundation that every expert has taken it for granted. Coming from outside the industry allows you to ask a different question, allows you to challenge the foundation of what every expert has taken it for granted. And that lateral thinking, that new way of asking the questions that have never been asked before, allows you to look at the problem so differently that you can be 100 times better than someone else, rather than just be 10% better than the experts here, right? And that is really the key to actually disrupting. The key to doing something that has never been done before is to really coming from outside the industry, looking in, applying the things that you learn, the skills from one industry into a completely different industry. And what I found that is, having done 6 other companies in completely different industry, the biggest asset that I bring to the table is to be able to look at the problem from a new angle, to be able to really recreate, reimagine, and redefine what experts have taken it for granted. So anyone who is listening to it, don't limit yourself to, how can I do it? I know nothing about it. In fact, you should think and say, hey, The fact I know nothing about it is my biggest asset. So don't look at not knowing things as your liability, but as your asset. And as I think you start to look at the problem, something that you think is so obvious, something that seems such a common sense to you, maybe a breakthrough that someone in that expert is going to say, oh my God, I never thought of it this way. And that is really the key is don't ever undersell yourself that you know nothing about it, because that may be exactly the kind of thing that will allow you to come up with a breakthrough answers.
Yeah, and kind of like I said, when you have a purpose, it takes you into other areas, that you've never really thought about. And suddenly, you're learning things and you're like, I had no reason to learn this before. But if I'm going to actually make an impact and know what I'm talking about, I need to actually do some research in this. So one of the things you also usually say is, instead of saying, what do you want to do? It's what do you enjoy doing? What skills do you have inherently that could you lead? Could you talk a little bit more about, that conversation that we've had before?
Of course. I think, in some sense, we tend to do the things that we have done before. And, we actually start to categorize ourselves. I am a scientist. I am a communication person. I am a marketing person. I am this person, right? And then you say, well, if I'm going to leave this, I need to look for another job of a similar kind. And what I found really is to actually step back and say, if I am a person who is in counseling, well, I am really good at what I do. Don't say that, hey, I need to look for another counseling job. Ask yourself, what makes me really, really good at counseling? And you will learn and say, well, oh, the reason is because I'm a good listener. Good. I am also able to I have empathy towards what person is saying. I'm able to take a lot of different ideas and able to condense them into something that only I can do. And you start to break down what makes you good at your job. And suddenly you say, if I have these set of tools in my tool chest, if I have all these strengths and all these skills, what other jobs can I do with these skills? And suddenly you would say, well, that's exactly what you need for marketing. That's exactly what you need for communication. That's exactly what you need to be an entrepreneur. That's exactly what you need to be doing this job that I never thought is something that actually fits my skills. But I actually had that underlying core assets that I never actually even took a stock of, right? So always find out what is in your inventory, what are the tools that are in your tool chest, right? And don't define them by the job that you're doing. Define them as the key blocks, the key asset blocks that you have. And where can you use these blocks and what are the other things you could be doing? And I think that you mentioned the purpose a couple of times, Helene. And I think to me, that's the core of doing things that have a purpose. And, I think I'm going to go slightly tangent here because, every one of us has this desire that we want to live healthy and we want to live longer, right? And people have these ideas of what is that longevity, what allows people to live long. And, it's interestingly, when I look at these things, it turns out it is really, really simple. Just very similar to the Maslow's hierarchy. There are things you have these 5 layers, but however, until the bottom layer is satisfied, you can't really ever go to the next layer, right? And I think I'm going to maybe, as we go along, I'm going to talk about what I have learned over the last 7 years about what allows people to stay healthy, what allows people to live longer. And it's not complicated. It's not, some, massive shift. So to me, the bottommost layer that I find in terms of living healthy and living long is proper nutrition. Now, the reason I say that is like, even if you have a beautiful, wonderful sports car like a Ferrari, if you don't put the right fuel in there, it doesn't matter. The car is not going to drive well until you put the proper fuel. Think of yourself as that, a amazing Ferrari. I was going to say, think of yourself as the race horse. That race
Yeah,
horse
there you go.
needs a proper nutrition, right? So you are that race horse that is a billion-dollar race horse who's going to win every championship. You are that Ferrari that's going to win the racing car. Now, what fuel are you putting in that is what's going to determine whether you succeed or not succeed. So to me, that's the bottommost part. And this is where a lot of people go wrong because they fall for the fat diet and say, oh, my neighbor is on a keto diet. I need to go on a keto diet. I was reading this magazine and it says, to lose weight and remove the brain fog, you need to take, this supplement. And I buy that, right? And I think what we learned over the years is that there is no such thing as universal healthy food. There is no such thing as universal healthy supplement. Just because something worked for your friend or it worked for your spouse doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Always remember, one man's food is another man's poison. Even though Hippocrates said that, all diseases begin in the gut, or for that matter, let food be thy medicine. But people forget that not all food is a medicine, right? There are some foods that are harmful to you. And this idea that a lot of us have, and I'm eating a plant-based diet, I'm eating plant food, so I obviously must be eating healthy. And in my way, I tell people, look, most of the poison actually comes from plant. Most of the drugs come from the plant. Just because it's a plant food doesn't mean it's healthy for you. And I think we have shown in our research time and time again that spinach can be good for you or spinach can be harmful to you. The broccoli may be good for you, the broccoli may be bad for you. The strawberry may be good for you, strawberry may be bad for you. Similarly for the supplement, NAD does not help you live long. In fact, now it is clearly shown that NAD or its precursor like an NMN or NR actually can propagate cancer. Right? It can actually be harmful to you if you have high cellular senescence. Turmeric may not be good for you if you have high bile acid. The point I'm trying to make is don't just fall and say, I'm eating healthy. Find out what is that healthy for you. That's the bottommost layer. The second layer is just as important. Now that you've gotten the proper nutrition, now you need to do the second thing, which is to reduce the stress. Now, find out what causes the stress in your body. And unbelievable thing is that stress is actually good. Stress is what allows us to survive. Stress is what allowed us to live when we were being chased by the tiger. Anytime there is a stress, our body goes into fight or flight response. What happens in the fight or flight response? Our body essentially shuts down all of the non-essential function. What is the non-essential function when you're being chased by a tiger? Digesting your food. The body says you're being chased by a tiger. You don't need to worry about digesting your food because you may be a lunch for someone else very soon. And that's it. It shuts down your immune system. It doesn't need to worry about are you protected against some pathogen. You're being chased by a tiger. Right? So all the non-essential functions shut down. And now you need to find out when you are in this fight or flight response, how do you get out of it? And I think culturally and religiously, we're trying to do things which are now become a second nature. Before we eat food, we say, let's do some gratitude. Let's do some prayer. Why do we do that? It's not because it's a religion or it's a routine. That gratitude and that prayer allows us to move from sympathetic mode to parasympathetic mode. That means moves you away from a fight or flight response into a response where you can actually now relax. So your digestion system is back into the right mode. Your immune system is now protected. People who are stressed, they get sick very often. Why is that? Because their immune system is actually not functioning well. Right? Now, you need to get to the root cause of what's causing stress. Sometimes, for many people, it's the work. I mean, their boss stresses them out, their colleagues stress them out. And when they go home, their spouse stresses them out. Now, I'm not suggesting that you leave your job or leave your spouse, but if that really is the source of the stress, you got to really rethink what you do with your life. right? But anyway, so that's really do meditation, do the things that gets you into the parasympathetic mode, get to do the things that allows you to relax. And if going for a walk it is, meditation is it, do that. But that's a stress reduction. The number 3 in the hierarchy is exercise. Now, I would never tell someone that you have to be a gym rat. Exercising is not about spending an hour or 2 pumping iron or really being in the gym. Exercise is very simple. Even if you can get 45 minutes of a fast walk, that's all you really need. Get your heart rate up and leave it there for 10, 15 minutes. That's all it is. To get 30 or 45 minutes of fast walking, and you actually can, it does 80 to 90% of all the benefits you would get from exercise. The 4th part is sleep. The sleep is, again, it is the quality of sleep matters. It's not just the quantity of sleep, but the quality of sleep. So a lot of people say, I need, I'm told I need 8 hours of sleep. Well, it's not 8 hours of sleep. You need to be able to get between 1.5 hours to 2 hours of REM sleep, 1.5 or 2 hours of deep sleep, right? So measure how are you getting your sleep. I have trained my body enough that as soon I work all day, and when I hit the pillow, I'm out within minutes, right? Now, even if I get 6 hours of sleep, I'm able to get a good 4 hours of deep sleep and REM sleep, right? And then 2 hours of light sleep. And that's more than enough for me to be able to function if 18-hour days, right? And that is the key to getting a quality of sleep. Remember, you can't improve something unless you measure it. So find the device that allows you to track your sleep. Now, I'm being an information junkie, and you can probably figure this out. I have multiple things. I keep my Oura Ring, I have my Apple Watch, and by the way, I have the Withings pad, the sleep pad under my mattress. So that measures my sleep. My Oura Ring measures my sleep. My Apple Watch measures my sleep. I know everything that's happening with that, right? Now, once you've done that, the 5th and the most important part then is the purpose. And it is clearly shown people who live a life of purpose tend to live 10 to 15 years longer than the people who have no purpose. And having a purpose in your life is so important. This is what keeps you going every day. Ask yourself, what are you willing to die for? And then live for it. And one way to know, are you living a life of purpose or not, is really, really simple. When you wake up in the morning, and if you're like me, that gets up at 4 a.m. every single day, if you're not jumping out of the bed when you wake up in the morning, whatever you're doing, you should quit, because that's not your purpose. Because once you find your purpose, you jump out of the bed with joy. With that purpose, every minute of your life, you think about doing things that you believe are taking you towards your North Star. I was going to say that when you wake up in the morning and if you feel you're doing God's work, that is the kind of purpose I feel I get the joy in the morning. And every morning when I wake up at 4 a.m., I jump out of the bed with joy, because I say, thank God for giving me that, purpose that actually drives me every single day. So with that, I hope everyone who's listening to it could live a long, happy life.
I'm really glad you talked about nutrition as being the core, because I know for me, and I think you remember when I joined and I was super excited, Viome was kind of my newfound purpose, I was going to put all myself into it, but I had such bad anxiety, and I thought it was all mental. I thought everything was just, there was something that I was doing wrong, or I just was naturally anxious. I don't know, but they wanted to give me medication. But my diet at the time was so poor, I was really not eating. And then when I did eat, I was doing keto. So this was after years of, not eating fat and then eating so much fat, and just my diet was terrible. And after 6 years where I've been doing Viome and doing other things that address kind of that core, that gut microbiome with, meditation and all that, but addressing your health and the amount of the way I can handle stress now is so much different. than 6 years ago. And it took time. This wasn't obvious. My body went through many different changes. So it was really, really important. But the whole point is you can't really have full focus on your purpose if you don't have a good diet. You can't handle that next level of stress if you don't have a good diet. So I think it's super important, and I can't stress that enough. So one thing I hear you talk about quite often is how you go about, setting up your next moonshot. So when you're thinking about something that you want to do next, or the type of team that you're going to want to build around you to help support you, what are those key questions or steps that you walk yourself through?
That's a great question, Aline, because to some extent, I have created this framework, having done this so many times. Every time I start any company, anything that's worthwhile doing, I ask myself 3 questions. Why this? Why now? Why me? And each one of them have a very purpose to it, right? Why this is really simple. I ask myself and think, God forbid, I am actually successful in solving the problem that I set out to do. Would it help 1 billion people live a better life? Now, why do I ask myself that question? It's not because I am just a philanthropic person. Of course, we all human beings want to do good in the world. But to me, it also is extremely capitalistic thing to do, which is very simple. If you can find or build any product, any service that helps 1 billion people live a better life, you can create a $100 billion company. But you don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, I want to create a $100 billion company. What should I do? Making money is simply a byproduct of doing things that improve people's life. It's that simple. If you stay focused every day when you wake up in the morning, what can I do right now, today, to make people's life better? That is what allows you to create a great company. And making money is simply, as I said, is a byproduct of it. It is never the end goal. It is never the destination. It is simply a byproduct of doing things, right? So that is my first why this. The why now, and I'll apply this to actually even my most recent company, Viome, and so at least people can see how I apply these techniques to something very real. The why now is actually ask yourself what had changed in the last 1 to 2 years. But more importantly, what do you expect to happen in the next 3 to 5 years that will allow you to solve this problem at scale? And more importantly, this problem could not have been solved 5 years ago. That means you're really asking yourself, what technologies are you using that will allow you to solve this problem using tomorrow's technology to solve tomorrow's problem, not something using 5 years old, yesterday's technology to solve tomorrow's problem, right? In this framework, another important part that is really key, and I want everyone who's listening to it to be able to apply this to whatever they are thinking of doing, is you never ask yourself how you're going to do something. How is not the part. Imagine you simply ask, what problems have to be solved? What are the mini problems that have to be solved for this big goal that you want to solve, right? So you can say, hey, for example, in maybe look at completely different industry than say from healthcare, right? I want to go live on in a different galaxy. I'm going to live on Venus. Let's just start with simple. Live on Venus, which is still part of our solar system. And you say, okay, I want to live on Venus. Don't say, oh, that's never going to happen. You simply say, what needs to happen for me to live on Venus? You have to be able to leave Earth gravity to go to essentially leave the Earth gravity to get to the Earth. Oh my God. So, yeah. You leave the Earth gravity. That's the first problem to be solved. The second problem is once you go from Earth orbit, the Earth orbit to say Venus orbit. So that's the second problem to be solved. And the third problem is, how do you land from the Venus orbit onto the Venus surface? And the fourth is really, how are you able to now make a sustainable living once you are on Venus, right? These are really the four problems that have to be solved. And you start to look at this stuff and saying, well, leaving the Earth gravity, we have done that many, many times. We call them a rocket. That problem is check mark solved. Next thing is going from Earth orbit to the Venus orbit. We know we have been to Mars. We know we have sent actually the orbiters to actually outside our solar system. So we know how to go very far distance. Now, in terms of landing, we said, look, we have landed on the moon. We have landed on the Mars. We have landed 3 ways on the Mars. We had the bouncing ball. We actually had a crane. We had a parachute. But you know what? And Venus, it may be slightly different. It may be lesser atmosphere. And maybe we can modify one of these different things to make it work. But it doesn't seem like a challenging thing to do. And the last part is, how do you make the sustainable living? And that's where my next question comes in, which is, why me? Why me is, what question are you asking that is different from what everyone else in the industry has been asking? The question you ask is the problem you solve, right? So in this particular case, if you say, hey, if you're going to live on Venus, how are you going to grow the food on Venus? That is a question most people will ask. But guess what? When you ask that question, the only solution is to find a way to grow the food. But imagine, what if you were to ask a slightly different question, which says, why do we eat food? Just simply asking, why do we eat food? You say, oh, the reason we eat food is because we need energy and we need nutrition. Now, what are the different ways we can get energy? Well, suddenly you say, well, the plants get energy from photosynthesis. Can we take the genetic material from those plants and actually use CRISPR to modify the human genes, and suddenly we can actually get energy from photosynthesis? Now, well, guess what? There are many bacterial species that grow in radioactive nuclear waste. And what does that mean? These bacterial species have found a way to protect their DNA from radiation, but more importantly, they have also figured out how to use the radiation as a source of energy. Now, can we take a genetic material from those bacteria, modify ourselves, and suddenly we are now protected against the DNA, protected against the radiation, and also get this energy from the radiation? Now, imagine in the evening, you're saying, hey, honey, do you want to go out and pizza? You can say, honey, do you want to go out for a walk and get some radiation? And that may be the source of energy for us, right? Suddenly asking a slightly different question allows you to solve the problem in a way that was never solved before. And this is really the beauty of all these things are, how do you do that, right? And that's literally how we started to think about Viome. The question we asked differently at Viome that no one has asked before was very simple. Everyone in the industry was saying, hey, to solve the human health problem or solve the chronic diseases problem, you have to know your DNA. And it occurred to us that DNA does not change when you develop obesity. It doesn't change when you become diabetic. It doesn't change when you have heart disease. It doesn't change when you have depression. It doesn't change when you have anxiety. It doesn't change when you have Parkinson's or Alzheimer or on and on and on. Now, if we don't, in fact, even if you die and somebody were to measure your DNA 10 years after you die, it's still the same DNA. Remember, we can still look at the DNA of dinosaurs. If DNA can't even tell you you're dead or alive, how will it ever tell you you're healthy or sick? And that was the fundamental breakthrough. Remember, I am not a scientist. I am not a doctor, but I do remember my high school biology, in which was simple. The DNA does not change. And what really changes all the time is RNA. In fact, mRNA or the non-coding RNA. So we fundamentally say, what if, instead of measuring DNA, what if we could measure RNA? Because we know the RNA is what allows your body to actually act very differently. And in those days, Helene, I did not know how to explain this DNA and RNA until I actually looked at from myself and I said, oh, I know what. Every part of my body is identical DNA. You look at my hair, you look at my skin, you look at my eyes, you look at my finger, look at my nail, identical DNA. Then why is it we don't have the eyes growing on my finger and the nails growing on my hand. A simple reason is because the same DNA, when certain genes are underexpressed and other genes are overexpressed, it becomes your hair. When the different genes are overexpressed and different genes are underexpressed, that means a different RNA, that become the eye. That means same genes can express differently and they can become hair, eyes, skin, nails, anything. Now, that is literally what it is. Your DNA is like an alphabet and your RNA is the story you're writing. And what we are looking at Viome is, what story are you writing? Because once we know what is changing, we can say, oh, you're moving towards becoming a diabetic, or you're moving towards a person who's going to have heart disease, or you're moving towards a person who has depression, or you're moving towards a person who is unfortunately may have heart disease, right? And for that, and cancer. Right? That was the first part. The second question was, I, being an information junkie, as I told you before, I read a lot. I probably read 20 books, and I probably read several hundred research papers. And I went to Dr. Google, and I start typing diabetes and microbiome. I start, you pick a name, cancer and microbiome, cancer therapy and microbiome, Parkinson's and microbiome, Alzheimer and microbiome. And I was just absolutely shocked to see every single disease is actually connected to microbiome. And for a second, I had this idea of eureka, I found the problem. And that's when I asked myself, you must be the biggest moron. Because if everyone believes in the same thing, and there are 10 companies that are doing the microbiome testing, why is this problem not getting solved? What do you do when you have that, when you suffer through that? You go back to the first principle. You say, what question are these microbiome companies asking? Well, it turned out that every single microbiome company to date is asking the same wrong question, which is, what organisms are in your gut? What organisms are in my gut? What organisms are in your mouth? What organisms in my mouth? And they thought once they found out what organisms are there, they can tell you why you're getting sick. Well, it turns out that organisms are like human beings. The same organism can do something good in one environment, and the same organism can do something toxic in another environment. Just like a person, you take a person, put them in a good environment, good behavior. You take the person, put them in a bad environment, the bad behavior. Now, this is a really good example. Akkermansia. Akkermansia, some companies are selling them as a probiotic. And that is exactly the organism is essentially associated with MS and several other neurodegenerative diseases. So imagine, it can be a probiotic in one environment, and it can actually harm you in another environment. And by the way, anyone who's listening to it doesn't need to take my word for it. Just type in Akkermansia and MS, and you can see the research for yourself. So point is, it is not the organism, or in fact, there could be 10,000 different organisms producing exactly the same thing that is making you sick. So what do, Helene? We focus on what they are producing, not just who they are. So there are two things here. We look at how the human host is expressing the genes and how the what is that microbiome producing? And then we're looking at the interaction between the microbes and the human host. And that was asking a different question. So our thing was, we say, we are not going to look at DNA, we're going to look at mRNA and the non-coding RNA. We are not going to look at the microbes, we're going to look at what they are producing. And by looking at that interaction, we will find out what is causing people to be sick, and then use the right set of foods and nutrition to make them healthy. And that is what we set out to do 7 years ago. And it is really satisfying today to sit here and have this conversation, because we didn't have the answer. We didn't know what we didn't know. And today we are able to diagnose cancer at stage 0, stage 1, right? Today we are able to, in fact, predict when someone is going to have a disease. And today we have the data to be able to understand what is the root cause of certain diseases, and can we actually modify them. We are publishing, we're doing a placebo-controlled trials that are clearly showing the food can actually reduce your depression or anxiety or diabetes or obesity or IBS or IBD and many of these symptoms, right? So to me, it is so satisfying to actually be able to take that idea and make it real.
Yeah, and I want to say that you put that all together to solve a problem of chronic disease, right? But to people who don't have chronic disease, you're still dealing with health issues. You know, you're still dealing with symptoms that are manifesting that are not quite there yet. So I think the positioning of Viome to answer a problem is big with chronic disease, but it's also for people that are dealing with health issues every day. And, you know, on the internet, there's so much information. There's so much, there's opinions, there's this study was done over here, there's this over here. You know, like you don't really know what to believe. So one thing, even before I joined Biome as an employee, what resonated with me was the fact that finally someone like me who had such a fear of food, because I was so in control of, you know, this is what I need to eat because this is how it affects me. And I thought I was thinking scientifically. But, you know, something like Viome allows you to see what's going on in your body. So you can kind of cancel out that noise and just find that signal and say, okay, I am my own best baseline. What's going on in my body? How can I see it improve over time? So that to me is a huge benefit of Viome. That's, you know, chronic disease is a huge mission and we're on our way. But I think there's tons of people that can benefit from this kind of information, especially with this.
Helene, I really like what you did, what you said here, because by the time we see the symptoms, it's already too late. By the time we become diabetes, it has been going on for 15 to 20 years. The Parkinson's starts 20 years before you see the first symptom. It starts in your gut 15 years ago, 15 years before you see the symptom. So don't wait for the symptoms to show up. Symptoms are a sign the body is already broken, just like your car. Now we have, you know, what we have is the early signal, early engine detection light. You don't wait until your car stops driving and say, oh, looks like my car is broken, right? And when your car is broken, you go to a car mechanic. In our case, when we get broken, we end up in ER. That is not what you and I want to do. So what really is, we need to be able to build these signals when actually we can start to say, look, you may not be seeing any symptoms, but you're starting to see inflammation chronically in your body. It is a matter of time whether it becomes a diabetes or heart disease or depression or anxiety or some other disease, but it's starting to happen. So if you want to prevent or if you want to stay healthy, you have to act before you see the disease. Now I want to move away from this topic, Helene, and maybe I want to actually go back to our moonshot conversation again. What is it that stops people from, you know, finding their moonshot or actually implementing their moonshot, right? A lot of people who have big dreams have massively great ideas, but they are afraid and they look at themselves and say, well, I don't think I can do it. It is too big, right? What if I fail, right? There are a couple of points I want to make here. And one is, it is easier to actually do a big idea than to do a small idea. And let me expand on that, because it's just such counterintuitive thing to think. When you have a big idea, guess what happens? The best and the brightest from the industry want to work on helping you solve that problem. The best and the brightest want to work on the toughest problem. The people who are successful, they want to become significant. They need to work on something that's legacy making. That becomes their legacy of solving that problem, right? So when you tell someone, for example, when I started the company, we said, look, imagine living in a world where being sick is truly a matter of choices we make every day and not a matter of bad luck. That was such a big idea, that can we actually empower ourselves so that we don't have to be sick? With that idea, I was able to find, again, I don't know how to do this. I was able to find the technology for this at Los Alamos National Lab. I was able to get that hand on that technology, even though it was being developed for biodefense work. They were willing to give it to me because they realized that what I'm doing could fundamentally change the lives of 8 billion people on this planet, right? So once I did that, I was able to hire the chief scientist who actually worked on this technology, Dr. Vucic, Dr. Momo Vucic, actually joined me. I ended up calling the head of IBM Watson to say, we need a best AI person to actually work and make sense of this data. Dr. Guru Banwar, who was the head of IBM Watson Research, ended up joining us. We, as you know, recently we hired the global head of R&D from GSK. But the point was, as we started to build these, some of the most amazing people, because they all wanted to work on this problem that could change the lives of people, that could change the trajectory of how humanity is going to live. Every venture capitalist start calling and say, hey, why are all these people joining you? What are you doing? And when you tell them this vision of what if this was possible, every one of them wanted to give you money. And suddenly you had a team, you had the money, and you had an idea. It all started with thinking about something so crazy, something so big that people thought I was crazy. And that's the thing. Dream so big that people think you're crazy. And never be afraid to fail. You never fail as an entrepreneur. Your idea that you start with may or may not work, but every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea and a bigger idea. So remember, the only time you fail in life is when you give up. Everything else is just a pivot. So that's really one concept. The second concept is, as in your life, whether you are an entrepreneur or you're doing anything in life, there are going to be ups and downs. And that is really learning to embrace that ups and downs is the key. And the way I am able to find myself living is, I see as an entrepreneur, I need to be alive. What makes me know that I'm alive is I have a heartbeat. What does that heartbeat look like? It goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And when it is smooth, you're dead. Why would you want to live a life that is smooth like a dead person? So when you are looking for a smooth life, you're looking and asking for to live a life of a dead person. Right? If you live a life that goes up and down, all you have to do is know when you are down, the next beat is going to be up. All you have to do is hunker down and wait for the next beat to be up. But the key is, when you are on top of that beat, never become too arrogant, because you know the winter is coming and winter shall come, right? And that's the thing. Never settle for a smooth life, because living a smooth life is living a life of a zombie, living a life of a dead person. So be alive. Go out and do things that bring you joy. Find something that brings you so much joy that you're willing to jump out of the bed every single minute of your life.
So that's a good point. Today, especially, we always talk about on social media, everyone's putting their best face forward. So as an entrepreneur, you're kind of more under the spotlight with more pressure on you to be successful, and people are not really willing to put failures out there. So how do you keep yourself motivated when you feel like things are extra hard, or the world is, going through what it's going through, or which I've kind of seen us, we deal with it at Viome a little bit, when you're really ahead of the curve, it's hard because not everyone has caught up there yet, right? So you're kind of standing there on your island going, I promise it's really great over here, and the whole world has to kind of shift. And it's a lot, it's why we're disrupting so many industries, because people have thought about things the same way for so long. So how do you stay motivated to keep fighting for that mission when, things get real tough?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting is that, you have to first of all redefine what success means, right? Success is not about how much money you have in the bank. Success is about how many lives you're improving while you're still alive, right? So to me, I define success simply about how many lives are we impacting positively every single day. When we are doing something, if you know you're improving people's life, That is the motivation that drives every one of us. As you know, there is never a day that goes by we don't get 10 emails, 100 emails a day when someone says, thank you for curing my daughter with eczema. Thank you for saving my wife's life because she has been suffering for so long with IBS. Thank you for, I've been suffering from depression. Thank you for helping me with that. I've been all my life had anxiety. Thank you for helping me with that. Right?
By the way, we share those with the company when we get those because they are, yeah. I mean, they're so amazing and they're so rewarding and things that you don't even think are related. You find out through customers. So I think it's
well, one of the biggest thing was I was at an event I was speaking, and this guy comes to me and said, I got to tell you something. I had this toe fungus, and it was so bad that I had been trying for 8 years with the toe fungus, was completely rotten toe, and now I have been doing well, and it got away. And he wanted to show me the picture of the rotten toe fungus, and I said, I really believe you. And he said, no, you have to see it. The point is, I would have never in my life imagined that the thing that we do actually allows someone to actually get their toe fungus to be gone.
Yeah,
right?
It's
but
crazy.
Again, as you get rid of the root cause, which is the chronic inflammation in your body, many of the things that we call these symptoms and diseases are really your body not being at ease. When you have a chronic inflammation, it causes chronic diseases. When your body is not at ease, what do we call that? Dis-ease, which is disease. Disease is nothing but dis-ease.
Yeah. I think, Lisa, sorry, we went a little over, but I want to make sure we have some time for Q&A. I'm sure we have lots of questions. So I think Lisa's got.
Yeah, I've got some questions. Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start up here at the top. Just give me a moment to scroll. So I found some interesting questions on entrepreneurship and starting businesses.
Okay.
This one is Naveen. Early on, when working on a startup, how much focus would you place on sales and marketing versus product and services?
Well, again, remember, it's not about sales and marketing. It is about building something that improves people's life. And it's amazing thing, Lisa, that we found. When we took care of one person, they actually became our ambassador and became a sales and marketing person to tell 10 other people. There is rarely I've seen people when they do a wine service, they end up buying it for a whole family. They start for themselves and they get benefit. They buy it for their partner, they buy it for the mom, they buy it for the dad, they buy it for the whole family as a gift. And to me, that is the base sales and marketing. So you have to sell something because you're trying to convince someone to buy something. But if you can actually make your customers your salespeople, which essentially is simple, you take care of them and they will spread the word for you. And that to me is the best sales and marketing you can ever have.
All right. Here's another one. What do you think is the single most responsible factor to contribute for your great success?
Well, again, there's several things here you could look at. One is obviously asking a right question. That means you have to fundamentally say, how am I looking at this problem that is different from what everyone else has been doing in the past? So really, having a different way of looking at the same problem, that's one. And the second thing really in terms of it is, I would say, is timing. And now the reason I say that is a company, even with a great idea, with the wrong timing ends up failing. And the way we do that, the timing thing getting right is remember, why now? Why now is about, is the time now? So really asking yourself those three questions, why this, why now, and why me, really is the key to almost everything I do. And literally I apply that principle to everything I do. And, knock on wood, so far, everything that I've done has been wildly successful. And I, to large extent, I thank God every day for blessing me with what we have today. Having grown up very poor, having grown up with no food to eat, having grown up with no place to stay. And really, at this point, seeing myself that having received the kindness from the God of everything I could ask for, I have today. I dedicate my life to actually solving the problems that improve other people's lives, because I feel the society has given me so much. Society has uplifted me from when I needed them. And that is what drives me every day. There is no amount of money I make that's going to change my life. But guess what? Dedicating my life of next 10, 15 years of my life to solving this problem may improve the billions of people's life. And that is what drives me every single day.
Fantastic. Thank you. Here's another question. For people who don't yet have access to people who can solve huge problems, how do you recommend they get access and or exposure without ideas being taken?
Oh, I think, to be honest with you, if your only asset is your idea, then you may as well not do it, because the minute you actually launch it, it's going to be gone. The thing is, you have to have a better execution. And there has never been a better time in the human history than today, where it doesn't matter what part of the world you live in, you have access to the same group of people, access to same amount of capital, access to same amount of research, whether you're sitting in India or whether you're sitting in US. You can be anywhere in Ukraine, or you could be in anywhere in Europe. You have access to the same group of people. You can work remotely. So that, to me, the access to talent, access to research, and access to capital. Capital is not patriotic. Capital flows wherever the opportunities are. And to me, I actually always post my ideas, even before I start. Hey, I am thinking of working on chronic diseases. My thinking is these problems can be solved if we can have enough data about these people and we can use AI. Am I missing something here? Who else want to join me in solving this problem? Right? And any one of us can do that. You can post that on social media. Remember, ask for help. I find saying I don't know is your biggest asset. I don't have to be the know-it-all. I'm the person when somebody walks in and he says, oh, you need to be looking at RNA. And I was the first person to say, RNA? What is RNA? And then they had to explain me. And honestly, I went to Khan Academy, and we were working on the mitochondria thing, and I'm like thinking, I don't want to be that dumb to not even know what mitochondria is. I'm literally in Khan Academy. What is mitochondria? What is ATP? What is this electron pathways? And I was literally going and learning the basic biology facts, right? The point I'm trying to make is that all the knowledge that you need is available to you. Go to YouTube, go to Khan Academy, you can learn anything you want, and go ask for help. I'm the guy who walks up to anyone who is willing to talk to me and say, hey, how would I do this? I'm struggling with this. What should I do? And people are so willing to help you if you genuinely ask for their help.
All right. Let's see. I do want to, before I give you one last question, Naveen, where can you be reached on social media if people want to reach out to you and ask you another question, or, like on LinkedIn?
Of course.
Yeah. So
absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. And I said, I will answer all the questions you have. But, and Lisa, I think we started a little late. Let's give them another 10, 15 minutes. I do want to get through as many questions as we can while we're still here.
Sure. Here's another one. Can you share some of your personal values and principles that you live by with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the number one thing I live by is you're never, ever compromising who you are as a person. For no amount of success, you should ever give up your integrity. There is no amount of money should allow you to ever do things that your mother will not be proud of. Even if you think nobody is watching, everything you do, imagine if that was published in the front page of New York Times, how would you feel about it? And if the answer is not good, just don't do it, right? So to me, the values that to me is always live a life of purpose, always live a life of integrity, always believe that your purpose is in serving others And it's not a selfless thing to do. It is a selfish thing to do. When you serve others, you not only find joy, the true joy, you also build an amazingly great business, right? So to me, doing good and doing well are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they always come together.
All right, sage advice. Okay, here's another question. When is the right time to quit your job and start working full-time on your passion?
And answer is, there is no bad time. Anytime you can quit your job to do something that allows you to pursue your dream and your purpose, you will never fail. I know it sounds really silly. It sounds really, I know I don't have money, where my food is going to come from. And as I said, I come from very humble background. And when I started my first company, we have barely had any saving. And everything I put that into the company because I believe that, it is worth, what is the purpose of living if you're living miserably? When I was working, I actually felt that I was a prisoner of a job, a prisoner where I did not enjoy what I was doing, but I thought they were paying me to suppress my dreams. And that really is the key, is when you start to feel that you no longer are doing things that bring you joy. When you wake up in the morning and you don't jump out of the bed to go do that work that you're doing, that's the day you should quit your work. And that's the day you should pursue your true obsession. Remember, passion is for losers. Passion is for hobbies. When you find your true obsession that keeps you awake at night because you can't wait to solve that, you go out and do that.
All right. Next one. For entrepreneurs, how would you recommend we best find the right company to work for?
Yeah. And again, find the companies to work for that align with your values. Don't work for someone because they pay you the highest amount of money. Work for someone and some company that actually are doing things that you would do if you could do it on your own. So find things to learn from and be part of a bigger mission. Work for a company that is towards the same mission that you have. And when you find that company with the right mission, not only you will succeed, you will contribute to the company being successful.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, at what stage of building a moonshot do you seek funding?
Well, it really depends. Every time, every day you wait, it gets, cheaper and cheaper. That means the money that you take today is more expensive than the money you will take tomorrow. Because if you're building a company, every single day you're creating value. At the same time, you have to keep going. You don't have money to keep going. So the idea is you take your sweat equity. You take your sweat equity, start to build a prototype. And with that prototype, you can raise a small amount of money because you don't want to give up too much of your company. And that allows you to take it to the next level. And then you raise a little bit more money, and then you take it to the next level. And then you raise a lot more money, and then it takes it to the bigger level. And it's really about finding those steps where you are able to take as little as you need to get to the next step, because that funding is going to be cheaper at the next step than it is today.
All right. Naveen, if you don't mind talking about Viome specifically for a moment, there was a question about for 2023, what are some major achievements you're expecting for Viome?
Oh my God, there is so much exciting stuff. I wish you didn't ask me, because somebody's going to say, I can't believe you already disclosed that. So here you have it. Since you are, we are really thinking about, looking at the oral health and saying, today, if you were to look at oral health and Alzheimer's, oral health and heart disease, oral health and diabetes, there's so much of the research that's coming out that your oral microbiome is just as important as your gut microbiome. So we're really thinking about how do we adjust your oral microbiome. So we're going to launch an oral health test, and we're going to build the personalized products just like we did with supplements and probiotics. What if they could be personalized toothpaste? What if they could be the personalized oral lozenges? What if they could be the personalized products even for your skin? So what if you could do a skin microbiome and come up with a personalized skin from each individual? What if you can look at the scalp microbiome and really start to think about a personalized shampoo, personalized conditioner, personalized hair care products, right? And really start to look at what can be personalized for each individual as we learn more and more about that. We want to look at early diagnosis. You saw that we are able to now detect stage 0 and stage 1 cancer in your mouth and throat. Now imagine if we can do that for pancreatic cancer, the colorectal cancer. What if we can do that for other diseases like IBD? What if we can do that for other life-threatening, or at least the diseases that really compromise our quality of life? And what if we can diagnose them very, very early while they're still curable? And these are the kind of things that we really believe takes us a step closer to our mission of creating a world where sickness is truly a matter of choice.
Awesome. Exciting news, exciting news. Next question. What are your thoughts on building a service-based company and evolving it into a software company later?
This is too specific, and I don't know specifically what service and what software, but in general, the companies that are, if you mean the services, consulting services, the answer is yes. Even the software actually is the old model. You want to really build what we call the software as a service. So really the right way of doing it is to really make it, rather than selling consulting services, rather than selling software, to sell the software as a service, the SaaS model, where you are able to actually charge as they eat. Right? So instead of selling the Microsoft Office as a software, now you can actually have Office 365 where you use and pay every year, right? And that's the kind of things that I think is going to be the most successful, is neither the software, not a service, but a software as a service.
All right. Helen, I want to jump in here and ask you, do you have an additional question for Naveen based on all the material that he's talked about here today?
Well, I thought it would only be fair, and he might say he already answered this with Biome, but I think it's only fair that you kind of give us your 2023 moonshot.
Yeah.
Maybe your personal moonshot, not Biome related. Don't flip it back on me. This is your question.
Right. So, to me, my moonshot is still the same that it was last year. I want every single year, every single day, I ask myself, am I better today than I was yesterday, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually? And really making myself better every day is really my moonshot. Now, at the end of the day, my moonshot really is to serve the humanity to be better. And, to large extent, today, it is about doing that through healthcare. But someday it may be about agriculture, it may be about education. But my ultimate moonshot remains the same, which is, how do I take what I know and how do I take my set of skills and really serve the humanity to give back what I have received from the society? And whether it is today with healthcare, whether it is, it used to be about going to the moon, or tomorrow it may be about fixing education system, or really about having agriculture that is sustainable, and or energy, or for that matter, climate change, on and on and on. There are a lot of things. The world is never going to run out of problems to solve.
Fair. All right. I think we are at an end. Lisa, we probably should cut it off. Thank you to everyone who, joined us in this holiday week for this hour. I hope that you got something out of it. And we will see you at our next webinar. Lisa will probably let everyone know that date when it happens, but
yeah, I will. And also, hey, I just want to jump in, and we do have a discount code because we appreciate so much everybody attending and listening to the advice that Naveen has. I have a discount code for our full body intelligence kit. It's code Dream Big, one word, DREAMBIG, and you get an additional $50 off your full body intelligence test kit, so you can get one and try it out today. And that's
Lisa,
yes.
is this going to be recorded so people can watch it later?
Absolutely. That was another thing I was going to say. I got quite a few and I tried to answer them all. Yes, we have this recorded, and we will be, to everybody who registered for the webinar, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording so that you can download it and watch it at your leisure and write up your moonshot goal for 2023. All right. Any last
And I
words?
want to thank you, everyone. Yes, I want to thank everyone who joined me live and the people who will be watching it later as a recorded message. Please know I'm always here for you. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, reach out to me on Instagram, and never, ever forget to dream big. And remember, your moonshot is simply a shot away. So take a moonshot.